Usually I try to open these videos with a summation or, hit on some quick points about what we're going to talk about, especially on these mailbag editions of the Morning Pit. I try and cover a few of the topics, but inevitably I run down a whole list that goes through like all the questions of like all the different topics that are addressed in the mailbag questions, and then we only get to like half of them. So I'm going to skip all that. I'm not going to summarize. I'm just going to jump right into it and try and get as many questions as we can, because we got a lot of great questions in this week's edition of the mailbag here on the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Friday. That means it's the Morning Pit Mailbag time, where we take questions from the readers at Panther-Lair.com. Every week around Tuesday or Wednesday, I put up a post on the Between Fifth and Forbes message board. That's our premium subscription message board. And I say, give me your questions. Questions on Pitt football, basketball, recruiting, anything else on your mind. I was hoping, we have this long thread going about The Wire and The Sopranos and Breaking Bad. I was hoping people would ask questions about that so I could spend like 20 minutes talking about those shows. But unfortunately, people had Pitt football on the brain, and so we got a lot of questions in that regard, and that's what we'll talk about here today. And I'm going to try to get through as many questions as I can. A lot of times we don't get through all the questions. A lot of times we miss a bunch of questions, or we only get halfway through, and then I would say we'll pick up on those questions next week. And that's what I said last week. I said the questions we didn't get to, we'll answer them next week. But then I just went back and looked at the last few questions that were left over from last week's mailbag, and they're all questions about, like, how many games can Pitt win? And, assuming they beat Virginia Tech, what can they do here or there? The situation has changed pretty considerably with almost all of those questions, so I think we'll just jump ahead to this week's questions. And there are a lot of questions, and a lot of good questions, a lot of topics I want to cover. So let's jump into it. Of course, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So you don't miss any of our Pitt video content, these Morning Pitt videos every day of the week, the Wednesday night live show, 8:30 p.m. every week, me and Jim Hammett. This week we were joined by Noah Hiles from the Post-Gazette. Had a great conversation. That was a lot of fun. We just have Noah on all the time. He was fun to talk to. It gave you like an inside view of like what it's like in the press box, basically, or sitting in the media room in the South Side, and the kind of conversations we get into. That's sort of that's what that was like on Wednesday night. That was a lot of fun. We do post game shows, of course, as well, live streams. We'll have that after the Louisville game next week, and then we have interviews and highlights and things like that, press conferences and everything at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you go over and check out Home Field. All right, I got to get their graphic back up because. So you can see the shirts, because I think it'll motivate you even more. HomefieldApparel.com has some of the best Pitt gear that you are going to find. And it's unique, but it's classic. It's instantly recognizable as being Pitt. I don't call it a vintage look. It's a classic look. And like I say, they're not reinventing the wheel. They're digging into Pitt's history and finding some of the great iconic logos and designs and marks and putting them on some of the highest quality shirts you're going to find. They have t-shirts, sweatshirts, bomber jackets, they have joggers, they have dad hats. I mean, they have everything you could want to outfit yourself as a Pitt fan, because even though you're disappointed in the Pitt football team right now, you still want to look good, right? And we can help you look good with this special promo code, LAIR23, LAIR23, all one word with the last two being numbers, LAIR23. You use that promo code at HomefieldApparel.com, and you're going to get 15% off your first order. It's some of the best Pitt gear you're going to find, and if you're just so fed up with Pitt that you don't want to buy any more Pitt shirts, they have stuff for like 150 colleges all over the country. I mean, pretty much any school that you would want a sweet shirt or sweatshirt for, they've got it at HomefieldApparel.com. You got to go check them out. It's great stuff, and you can get it for 15% off your first order with the promo code LAIR23, LAIR23. So go HomefieldApparel.com, check it out. Do it right now, and it'll be worth your time. All right, first question, and we jump right into it here. Jam05 Pitt, and I'm going to try and get as many of these as I can. Jam05 Pitt says, at the end of last season, if you had to choose between bringing back Slovis or bringing in Jurkovec, what would you do? Slovis had many well-documented issues with Cignetti's offense, but Pitt did end the season on a 5-game winning streak, 4 for Slovis, 1 for Patty. Phil had the connection to Cignetti, but was often injured and hasn't played quality football in years. Did you have more hope for Slovis improving in year 2 of Cignetti's offense, or Phil staying healthy and regaining old form? This is a great question. I love this question because I think there's a lot of different angles to it. On one hand, you could say, look, the offense was not a good fit for Slovis. And Slovis wasn't a good fit for the offense. And I don't know that it was ever really tailored to his strengths. I think you're seeing at BYU right now that the kid can still play pretty well. At the same time, there's something to be said for his performance after that hit that he took it against Tennessee, and that his performance, he slipped after that, for whatever reason. And so, that's something you have to consider too. But there's a question of whether it ever really would have clicked with Kedon Slovis and Frank Cignetti. I mean, Slovis was not the quarterback that Cignetti picked. I mean, as we've talked about, Slovis was committed long before Cignetti was ever hired. And so he was already in place when Cignetti came in, and Cignetti had to work with him. He wasn't sort of handpicked. I thought last offseason, and I thought through the spring and the summer, that there was merit to the notion that Cignetti and Jurkovec's history and relationship would be a positive for this offense. It would be a benefit for this offense and would give them a better chance to succeed than they had last year. Cignetti knew what Jurkovec could do. Jurkovec knew what Cignetti liked to do. And the two of them having that familiarity would give the offense a much better chance of succeeding than what they had in 2022. Who's the better quarterback? Who's the best cop now? It's Kedon Slovis. I mean, there's no, he's thrown 10 touchdown passes. Phil Jurkovec completing like 50% of his passes or less. Slovis is the better quarterback. The question is, who would have worked better with Cignetti this year? If you're not going to change the offensive coordinator, which quarterback works better? If you have a different offensive coordinator, then I think Slovis is the clear and obvious answer. If you had asked me last year saying, okay, Cignetti's coming back another year, who do you think would be the best fit? I would have said probably Jurkovec. You know what I mean? I might even still say that now, given how much they struggled to get anything going between Slovis and Cignetti. You're right, they finished on a 5-game winning streak, but it's not like the offense was really killing it in that situation. I think Slovis is the better player. He's the better quarterback. Would he have been the better fit with Cignetti? Maybe, just because Jurkovec looks kind of broken at this point. But that's an interesting question. It's an interesting, look back in retrospect, hindsight being 50-50, as Walt Harris once said. It's a tough call. Slovis is the better player, but I can understand counting on Jurkovec or hoping for Jurkovec to click with Cignetti in his final year of eligibility. Jay Lazinger says, I'm generally guilty of being overly optimistic, but when looking back at the stats, it's clear Jurkovec was never an accurate quarterback. What did they miss here? Was it just BS when they were telling us during camp about all these bombs he was completing? No, I mean, I think those things happened. I think those things happened in training camp. I think if you go back and look at what we talked about all summer and into the spring, was that, look, it's not going to be pretty with Phil Jurkovec. I said a bunch of times that I felt like sometimes the best thing he does when he's at his best is when he sheds a couple tackles, runs out of the pocket, and gets into a scramble drill and heaves one 50 yards down the field. He's what's the word? He's not a great on schedule type of quarterback. Accuracy has never been his strength. It's always been a problem. But arm strength, his ability to shed tacklers and run around and move around is what led him to having success in Boston College in 2020 is what they were hoping to recapture this year. Now, they're in spring camp and training camp. Quarterbacks are off limits. They have those red jerseys. He can't get hit. He can't get touched. He can scramble freely with no fear of being, subjected to any contact. And he can make those deep passes and take those shots and all that because he's not going to get hit. I think they were hoping and believing that he could recapture that by working with Cignetti again, and that the two would click like they did in 2020. Clearly they didn't, and probably for a variety of reasons, but the end result is they didn't. Saboteur2 says, if Pitt can't recruit good quarterbacks, should Pat Narduzzi stop recruiting one each year and just hit the portal? To be blunt, Pickett was a gift and quarterback recruiting has sucked. Then again, so has the portal. Or is it Cignetti? I think the topic of quarterback acquisition and evaluation is going to be one that we discuss a lot. And we already have been discussing a lot, and I think it's going to be one that we discuss a lot heading into the offseason and throughout the offseason. We've talked about it a lot over the last 2 years about recruiting quarterbacks, whether they should recruit quarterbacks, should they just give... I think I did a Morning Pitt episode over the summer of, like, does high school quarterback recruiting even matter anymore? And it does, but To a certain extent, the transfer portal, I think for a lot of schools, is becoming even more valuable than high school recruiting because on one hand, you bring in a high school kid. If he's not starting in 2 years, he's going to transfer. Case in point, Christian Veer, right? Christian Veer saw that he wasn't going to get a shot to start at any point in the next couple of years, and so he left. You're going to run into that. Davis Bevel left. You're going to run into that. If you recruit a high school kid every year and you get one guy who's going to start, and it seems clear he's going to start for the next 2 years, the next 3 years, well, the guy you recruited in the class behind him is probably not going to stick around. Now, this is not a reason not to recruit high school guys. It'd be better to have a bunch of high school guys and one guy separates himself and you develop him over the course of a couple of years and the other guys transfer. But I think the transfer portal is not going to stop being a significant source of quarterback personnel for Pitt and a lot of programs across the country. They just have to do better. They have to find the right guys. And quite frankly, looking what he's doing right now, Kedon Slovis was the right guy. Yeah, I think we can all say that. And I believed it at the time. I thought they were excited to get him. I thought they believed he would be a good fit. But that was before they hired Frank Cignetti. I think Kedon Slovis would have been a good option for Pitt last year if he was playing in an offense that fit him, with an offensive coordinator who called plays that fit him and designed an offense that fit him better. He's at BYU now, and it seems to be working. He's not lighting the world on fire, but he's got 10 touchdown passes in 5 games. Pitt, as a team, has scored 13 total touchdowns in 5 games. Kedon Slovis has 10 by himself in 5 games. I mean, you tell me who's having more success and, level of competition and all that, but he seems to be doing pretty well for himself. I think he was a good option. And if you can find a guy like him, and this ties into something we've talked about earlier this week about, Christian Veer and Nate Yarnell playing this season, you find out how desperate your need is for a transfer portal quarterback in December, and you find out how aggressive you need to be. If those guys can't play, you need to be aggressive. You need to go out and get the guy who's viewed the way Slovis was viewed last offseason. Last offseason, he was viewed as one of the top 3, maybe at worst 5 quarterbacks available in the portal. You need to go get that guy who's viewed that way, who is that way, who's one of those top 5 or top 3 or top 1 quarterbacks available in the portal. You need to be aggressive and go get him if Veer and Yarnell aren't going to get it done. It continues to be a useful source of quarterback talent for programs all over the country, and certainly Pitt can't leave itself out of that conversation, especially when you go into 2024 coming off of whatever this season ends up being. You're going to need a big bounce back. You're going to need a big jolt and a good season. You can't afford to be wondering, is Veer really the guy? Is Yarnell really the guy? You need to have the guy. And by the end of this season, you need to know if one of those 2 guys is the guy. And if they're not, and maybe even if they are, and you find a better option out there anyway, you need to go get a good transfer quarterback. It's part of it. It's part of the equation. It's part of the system. It's part of personnel and quarterback acquisition, and you need to master it. They clearly they blew it this year, and I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Berg B says, piggybacking off my comment in another thread, sitting at 1-4 with the putrid offensive results thus far, what would your recruiting pitch be if you are Frank Cignetti out visiting quarterbacks, not only due to the results on the field, but also due to obvious concerns about his employment beyond this season? Just don't see how it could be effective at this moment. I said earlier this week, maybe yesterday on the Morning Pit, I talked about business as usual. You recruit for the school until you no longer work for the school, and that's your job. You're contractually obligated to go out there and recruit for the school. And you walk into the high schools, you talk to the high school coach and the guidance counselor, and you talk up a good game about how great the academics are and the location. And yeah, we're struggling right now, but we feel really great about the future and all this. It's a recruiting pitch. You know what I mean? And it's sales. And you're not going to pretend that what's happening is not happening. And as for the future, you just don't bring it up. And if somebody asks you, Coach, I'm going to be honest, your offense is struggling, man. First of all, I don't think there's a high school coach that's going to ask a college coach, hey, man, are you going to get fired in December? But if somehow that topic becomes, gets broached, you say, if somebody asks you what the future is, you say, you know what? I think the future of this program is great under Coach Narduzzi. The things we've built, the things he has built, the culture, the locker room, the program. You recruit, you do sales. You redivert the conversation and steer it in the direction that you want it to go, and you avoid those difficult topics because ultimately you're stopping in to say hi to the coach. Maybe you bump into a couple players or something, but you're not there to do a full accounting of Pitt's football program. You're going to talk about how great everything is here, how they're struggling, but the future looks bright, and they hope that kid will come and be part of the program. Smenges says, is Pitt's recent run of O-line injuries before and early in the season a normal occurrence in Power 5 football? It seems like they've had terribly bad luck there, but I'm curious if it's actually common to lose that many projected O-line starters, and Pitt's depth just hasn't stepped up compared to other teams. I have no idea. I don't know how common it is. I mean, I think linemen in general, offensive linemen in particular, you have collisions on every single snap. If your team plays 60 or 70 offensive snaps or 50 or 60 snaps, that's 50 or 60 collisions you are being subjected to. 50 or 60 times you're banging your head into someone else. 50 or 60 times you're banging your shoulders into someone else. 50 or 60 times you're potentially getting rolled up on or getting a knee bent the wrong way. The closer you are to the football, the more you're around the football, the closer you are to the line of scrimmage, the more impact you're going to take and the more likelihood there's going to be for an injury. I think Pitt has had particularly bad luck the last 2 years, last year and this year. 2021, I think they were pretty lucky. They lost Owen Drexel at one point, but for the most part, they stayed relatively healthy. Last year certainly wasn't the case, and this year is certainly not the case. The depth is getting tested. It's getting an opportunity to grow up. And that was the case last year. And you thought that was going to put him in a really good spot for this year. And then Jacoby's lost for the year. Gonsalves is lost for the year. Jake Cradle's out for, who knows how long. Now that depth is getting tested again. And it should make them better for next year, right? Terrence Moore getting all this work. Ryan Baer getting all this work. These guys should be better prepared when they have to step into starting jobs next season. But, you want to stop having these years where the upside is that the young guys or the inexperienced guys are getting some playing time. You want to stop having that. You'd like to get to a point where, well, it's good that he got time last year because now he's leading the team this year. You want to kind of move past that. Look Left on Fifth says, will this dead feeling ever go away? I mean, first of all, I really appreciate your username on Panther-Lair.com. Look Left on Fifth. I mean, that was one of the most important things they taught us as freshmen, right? Look left on Fifth because the buses come flying up from the left on Fifth Avenue if you're crossing away from lower campus. But will the dead feeling ever go away? I mean, it's up to you. It's all on how you look at it. Johnny Gossamer says, how many 300-yard games will Christian Veer have this season? I'm going with 3. I mean, look at the optimism on you. Johnny Gossamer. It's, looking for the bright side here. 3 300-yard games from Christian Veer. Keaton Slovis last year had 2, right? And one of those was the Georgia Tech game. And the other was the West Virginia game. I'm not betting on any 300-yard passing games. I mean, based on the offense, based on, maybe 1. I guess I would say the over-under 1.5. I think 3 is probably shooting way too high. I mean, there's only 7 games left, and you're saying that Veer is going to, throw for 300 yards in half of those? Or almost half of those? I don't know. I have a hard time with that one. Pitman 2003 says, Chris, did Alliance 412 have a conversation with you because they're concerned about low membership? So this is in relation to a post I put up on the board on Sunday, I think it was, where, just being in conversation with some people at Alliance 412, the collective that's operating on Pitt's behalf. I've had different conversations with those guys over, I mean, not just recently, but for a while. I've been in contact with those guys, and we talk about different things. And in light of the Virginia Tech loss, it was Sunday morning. I'm sitting there thinking about some things we had been talking about, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna put some of this on the board. And I checked. I was like, what are you guys comfortable with me sharing here? And part of it was, about their membership. And are they concerned about low membership? Yeah. I don't think there's any question about it. You look at Michigan State's collective, if you've been following that story, the Spartan Dogs for Life or whatever it is. And the main booster behind that, the guy who was sort of spearheading the whole thing, shut it down because he said, look, we have less than 100 members. I'm willing to do more than my share here, but I can't carry the whole thing. We need more fan support. And so he shut it down, and they terminated the contracts with a bunch of scholarship players through that collective. That's bad. I mean, that's a really difficult situation. And unless someone or something else steps in there to kind of take over, I think Michigan State's going to be at a considerable disadvantage on its NIL efforts. I don't think Pitt with Alliance 412, I don't think Alliance 412 is in danger of having that guy at the top, who's Chris Bickle. I mean, you certainly know that name by now. I don't think they're in danger of him stepping away, but they need more fan support. And they really, I think all these collectives want sort of two ends of it. And it's sort of probably what the university and the athletic department would like for their own fundraising as well. But you need those guys at the top. I shouldn't say guys, those people at the top who are the big money, who can put a big chunk out at one time. But then you need a foundation. I mean, it's a pyramid, and you need that base, that foundation base of fans who are giving a little bit. Because if you have a lot of people giving a little bit every month, or a lot of people giving a little bit every year, all of those little bits add up to a pretty significant bit and become quality NIL efforts and quality NIL work. And we all know that kind of leads to in the landscape of college football, college athletics, really. And so are the people at Alliance 412 concerned about low membership? Yeah, I think they're always trying to drive membership. Are they concerned about the low membership? Yeah, I think they are, because I think they know they need more resources. They need to build this base. They need to build that foundation at the bottom in order to be more competitive and aggressive in the NIL landscape. And so are they concerned? Yeah, I think they are. Pitman 2003 says, is your understanding that Cignetti's pro-style offense is just too complicated for most college players? I don't know, but it sure doesn't seem to be working. I mean, you can tell me why it doesn't work. I think there are people smarter than me who could tell me why it doesn't work. Is it because it's too complicated? Is it because it's too slow developing? Is it because it's bad concept? Whatever it is, it's not working. They scored 7 offensive touchdowns against 4 FBS teams. That's not working. That's pretty bad. Here's another question kind of along the same lines. EJN3. I want to get through. Oh, man, you guys got a lot of questions here. I'm going to try and get through as many as I can. We've talked about the complexity of the offense before, the demands placed on the quarterback. Would you be able to ask a previous player an example of an in-the-huddle play call and the pre-snap reads that are required in the Frank Cignetti offense? Not that the Todd Graham offense was great, but they had one-word play calls. Very easy for the quarterback and other athletes to execute. Is this NFL offense too hard for a college athlete to digest and execute with limited amount of time they have to practice each week? I would say this, right? Pat Narduzzi drew a lot of attention this offseason when he made a comment about Christian Bear, and the kind of offense he's had to digest and learn, and how, he came from a place where they were using a one-word offense. And, of course, got to take that shot, and he's taking a shot at Penn State and Penn State's offense. But, I mean, that comes back to bite you right now when your offense can't do anything. And yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here saying, hey, man, maybe you guys should go to a one-word offense. Maybe instead of a 15-word offense, how about a one-word offense? Because that might give you a better chance to succeed. I don't know if that's what the issue is, but you need to fix everything you can right now because none of it is working. Alan McMurray says, even though Christian Bear will have had 2 weeks to prepare and take first-team reps, do you anticipate a simplified offensive game plan much like Yarnell against Western Michigan? Would you even anticipate a short leash and at any sign of struggle, the staff puts Phil Jurkovec right back in? On the last part, no. I don't think you never say never, but I don't think we'll see Phil Jurkovec play for Pitt again. I don't. Do I think they'll go with a simplified offense like Yarnell had against Western Michigan? Seems to me that's what they did at West Virginia, right? Didn't that game remind you of the Western Michigan game plan? Yeah, it seems like they should attempt that, but they need a quarterback who can even execute what they did at Western Michigan. I mean, what Nate Yarnell did against Western Michigan, Phil Jurkovec could not do or did not do against West Virginia. I'm not saying it was the exact same game plan, but it sure felt like the same concept or the same effort or goal. And then he threw 3 picks. Ulis92 says, you mentioned in past videos the ideal profile Pat Narduzzi is looking for in an offensive coordinator. What would it take for him to hire a different type of OC in the future, like younger and analytics driven? For example, anyone remotely close to the Shanahan-McVay coaching tree, or someone from an overachieving, explosive college offense, instead of old recycled names that have been figured out years ago. Basically try to replicate what we've seen in Houston on Sunday. Emphasis on the run game, limiting mistakes, and making the most of subpar talent. I mean, I think the thing, what Pat Narduzzi is going to have to get over to go in that direction is the idea of having an experienced, older offensive coordinator who can act as the head coach of the offense. He wants to be hands-off with the offense. He wants to leave it. He wants to hire somebody who can just run that side of the ball, and he leaves it to him. And that's it. And he walks away and goes and focuses on the defense. I think that's what Pat Narduzzi wants. And I think his hires have looked that way. And I think that, his comments have pointed in that direction when he talks about spending 85% of his time with the defense. He wants to walk away. He wants the offense to run itself. He wants the coordinator to run it. I don't know if he's going to trust a young, up-and-coming coordinator to do that. So is there an older guy, a more experienced guy who runs a more effective offense? Probably. I mean, probably you can find someone to run even an average college offense. I don't think if you hire someone older, I don't think you're doomed to get what you're seeing this year or what you saw in 2019. I think you can find someone who's been around for a while who can run an effective college offense. Let's see. Belchick 927 says, is there hope that this is just one bad season, or are we entering the Great Depression of Pitt football? Of course there's hope that this is just one bad season. And that's where the transfer portal and the quarterback situation comes in. Because if you don't think Ver and Yarnell are going to get it done, you can go find somebody who you believe will get it done. That it gives you the opportunity to make this one bad season and not something that carries over. The quarterback position, and I think there's another question that's going to come up along these lines. The quarterback position is what will determine whether this was one bad season or an extended period of struggle. It really is, because if you figure out the quarterback position for next year, I think they'll be okay. This team has struggled this season. There's no question on both sides of the ball. And I think there are a lot of reasons that you could come up with to explain it that make you feel like this is not, or to make you feel like this is a bad one-off. Injuries on the offensive line, youth and inexperience on defense. Get the O-line healthy, get those guys on defense, up to speed, get them more experience, and I think they'll be okay. I think this team as a whole, 21 out of 22 starting positions, could be playing pretty well by the end of the season, by the Duke game in the finale. But that one spot is what you have to figure out, because a lot of those guys are going to come back for next year. A lot of those 21 out of 22 starting positions, not all, but a lot, are going to be back for next year. So you should have a pretty good foundation to work with, but you have to figure out quarterback. When I pound on the table, the screen shakes. Did that really get the message across? You feel like it was Jurassic Park? You have to figure out the quarterback spot. That's what'll answer your question. Belchick 927. Your question will be answered by what they do with the quarterback spot. Because if they screw it up again, then yeah, it could be an extended period of struggle. If they get it right, then this year will be looked at as a one-off. Along those lines, Rocky Panther says, what are your biggest worries for next season? Next year, position-wise, it looks like quarterback, O-line, and D-line. And DB makes me nervous. I actually like our running back room and really like our receiver group, and I'm optimistic about linebacker because I think we have good talent. If I'm Pitt, I'm going out into the transfer portal this offseason based on, again, coming back to something we've talked about a lot, depending on what you think about these quarterbacks, what you think about Ver and Yarnell, I'm going out to the transfer portal to find a quarterback, an edge rusher, probably just one. I think one might be enough to really kind of add some oomph to that spot. Somebody who really can make an impact. And I might go look for a wide receiver. I'm with you. I like this receiver group. I think, let's assume everybody comes back. I like Konate Munfield. I think Dejon Reynolds proved some usefulness. I think Kenny Johnson's going to be a star. And maybe if Kenny Johnson by the end of the year is playing like a star, maybe you don't need a receiver in the transfer portal. But that would be a spot I would be kind of keeping an eye on. Quarterback, edge rusher, number one for me. And then you always have an eye on an O-lineman. You always have an eye on this or that. DB is going to be interesting. I think the safeties will be really good, but corners, and we've talked about this quite a bit, is they're basically just playing. They're not basically, they are playing 3 corners right now, and that's it. And they're all going to be gone after this season, which means you need to find out what you know about. Do you believe in Ryland Gandy? Do you believe in Noah Bigelow? Do you believe in Rashad Battle? Do you believe in Tamarian Crumpley? Do you believe in Shadarian Harrison? They're all good athletes. I think the staff was excited about all those guys when they recruited them. Can they play? Do you believe in them? If not, maybe a corner might be something you pursue in the transfer portal. But those would be my main areas of concern. Okay, I think we got through everything, almost everything. There were a few comments that weren't really questions in there, but I think we got through just about everything in this one. This is one of our longest mailbags ever. Yeah, we're past a half hour, so I appreciate everybody who stuck around for this. Listen, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. No game this week, so we won't have a post-game show, but you can watch this mailbag throughout the weekend, and then, of course, we'll have another Morning Pit for you on Monday morning. Go check out homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code LAIR23 to get 15% off your first order, and that way you can, win or lose, you look good, right? And then go to the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Panther-Lair.com. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. It's been a lot of fun, these Morning Pit videos. I mean, win or lose, we always have fun talking about it. So I appreciate everybody who tunes in and likes these videos and subscribes to the YouTube channel. Have a good weekend, folks. You made it to the end of the week. We will catch up with you on Monday for the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.